Welcome back to Let's Play Train Simulator. We will start out today with part 1, and we will do this route. This is the first route I did when I played the game for the very first time, where you start in Barstow and do a simple run out of Barstow into Victorville. It should take about an hour, and I may split the video. But if YouTube lets me upload a video that long, we'll go with it, and it'll be good. So we'll just go here and pick the scenario, and all you really got to know here is that it tells you the name of the scenario, the primary engine, the engine that you sit in at the front of the consist, and the estimated amount of time, which is usually not very accurate, and then the number of dots is difficulty level, so 2 dots is considered easy. This is a GE motor, GE locomotive. Not a lot of people know that General Electric makes trains. They also make airplane engines, but that's a different story altogether. So we will start that. And whenever you're loading a scenario, you always get shown all these screenshots of stuff that they try to get you to buy. I'd have to say Train Simulator 2013 is definitely the most one of the most intensive games for making you want to buy downloadable content, and it's also probably has the most expensive downloadable content to the history of games with downloadable content, except for maybe a couple of the MMOs out there that are just ridiculous. But for a non-MMO, the content you get extra is outrageously expensive and quantifiable, so lots of good options. But I got a couple of them, and we'll go over those. So we'll just wait for this to load. Shouldn't be too bad. My 64-bit system. So when you start the scenario, you get this nice little trimetric view of your train, and you usually get a welcome message, a short trip to familiarize yourself with the line. Exit the line by setting the switches accordingly to head down to East Victorville. So we're only headed to East. We're not going to get all the way to Victorville, but close enough. Okay, so as I said, what it'll do is it'll kind of give you this view where you can hold the right mouse button and look around, and that's how you get your motion and your center of reference is the engine that you're in. And this is a freight run as opposed to a passenger run. There's really only 2 main types of trains out there in the world. There's freight trains and passenger trains, and there's a lot of different ways that those two differ. The biggest one that will become obvious here is that freight trains don't really have a set schedule. They don't really have a time that they need to depart and arrive at destinations. You get the job done when you can get the job done, and the biggest priority is safety. Freight trains are typically much heavier, on the factor of 3 to 4, 5, even 6 times heavier than the biggest passenger trains, just because of the sheer length. This particular one is pretty short. You'll find, though, in real life, and I have real first-hand experience of this, is that the train consist lengths in the high desert of California are usually not that long anyway, especially those in this particular area, and that's because of the Cajon Pass, which is probably one of the most famous inclined routes on America's railway system, which is probably why they included it in this game. And we'll get to that on the second scenario, where I demonstrate the concept of dynamic braking as we head down the hill. So do that next time. This time we're just going to do this. You see I zoomed out to get a better view here. There's a group of controls down here that let you do that, let you zoom in and zoom out down here. Those are also cameras. Left view out your thing, right view out. These just kind of go to the front and the back of your engine, though. That's where they put the cameras for it. I'll go over a couple of these and show how they work when we do it, but that's the view you start out with is helicopter 1, which is the front, helicopter 2, which is the back. There's actually a caboose on this train, which is kind of funny. And then there's the passenger seat, which is the only place a passenger sits, and this is the caboose. There's the coupling view, that'll become important later. There's airplane view, which is like high up, and then there's this view, which is basically sets whatever camera you're in to free mode and lets you move around. Apparently if you use the arrow keys, you can move left and right and up and down and stuff. So you can see we're in Barstow Yard, and Barstow is a very famous large-scale train interchange area. So you can see the mass size of this yard. Very complex. and we actually we'll go into a little bit of how yards work. We'll do a little bit at the beginning of this one, and then we'll go into a more complicated one a little later on to show switching, how switching the tracks works, and how to show that. Okay, so a couple other controls we can go over here. We can go into the main cabin here, and I'll show you to take a look around. Windshield wipers, headlights. We do want to put the headlights on. Trains always run with their headlights on in the direction that they're moving. This is the load and unload cargo or passenger button. We won't use that this time. This is the sander. I'll explain that in a little bit. This is the horn. We'll go over how that works, and this is the bell. We'll go over what that means. All right, so this is like the main console view right here. You can reduce that by pressing F3 to a minimal view, but I'll probably spend a lot of the scenarios going over this so you can kind of see where the controls are set. We'll kind of go left to right here. This is like how much direction you're putting on your train when it turns. This is your objective, the time of the day it is right now, the distance to the objective, and the estimated time of arrival objective. This is blank because this is when there's a set schedule. You have to arrive there at that time or else you'll fail the objective. This top number is your current speed, and this bottom number is the speed limit of the track that you're currently on. It's not the speed limit of anything else. We'll go over that, but this is the speed limit of the track. So this is an absolute max. You can't exceed this speed limit, the speed limit of the track. If you do, you'll get a little red triangle indicator up here that says you're speeding and it's dangerous. This is the amount of power your engine is producing, essentially, or the amount of power that it's running at. So 315 RPM is idle for the GE. And then this is the amount of amp draw. And the amount of amp draw really only comes into play when you're generating power off the engine, and the amp draw is really what drives the train, and it also is a measure of how much power the rheostats are generating when you're dynamically braking, but that'll be a different topic. This is probably the most basic control. That's your throttle. That's the amount of power that you're actually transmitting into the train's wheels to get it moving. This is the reverser, which is basically the train can head forwards or reverse. It's the direction the power is being applied to the wheels to make it move in that direction. And this is the brake. Now, the thing with the brake is that there's multiple different brakes when you're on expert mode, and these are the multiple different brakes right here. The top one is the train brake, which means that you're applying brakes to you're applying brakes to at least one set of wheels on every single car in your consist. It's not just the front locomotive, it's every single car. So it's the maximum brake condition that gets you to slow down. And then there's this center one here, which is the locomotive brake, and this only applies the brakes on your engine, and that is only when you are only an engine, like when you're switching consists or doing switching. You only want to use that there because it won't slow you down nearly enough when this is the only train that's braking. And the third one is the dynamic brakes, which from a very high level point of view is basically a giant electric generator attached to the wheels that actually uses just force equals energy output equals zero to generate heat coming out the top of the train, which actually just slows the wheels down based on the energy production. So it's just an electrical generator that slows the train down, like magnets, I guess is what it is. I don't know the specific details of it, but you really want to use that on downhills, and I'll demonstrate that in the next area. This over here is your brake cylinder pressure. That's the amount of pressure that's being applied to the wheels to keep them stopped, and this is the amount of pressure that's available to use for braking. So that's kind of complicated, but those are actually pretty important to know. Like when this bar decreases as we get ready to roll, as soon as it's zero, that's when you can apply the throttle. You don't want to apply throttle when there's any brake pressure on the cylinders, because then you'll damage your brake cylinders. This is the amount of fuel left in the train, 5,000 gallons of diesel. This is a diesel engine. That's what most fuel burning trains are. I'd say almost all of them, that if they burn fuel, it's diesel. And then we already went over these. This exclamation point won't come into play on any road in the western United States. That's a automatic alert system, which we'll go over much later. And then the last three down here are the objective list, which, that pulls up the map. The objective list is by pressing F1. That'll give you your objectives. You want to go to Barstow and exit to East Victorville. The go vias are just telling you, what track you're going to be on when you do that. And I think that's that button. This is a coupling button. We don't have to worry about that right now. But this button is probably the one that's most important right now, the 2D map. as you can see, we are in the middle of Barstow Yard, and in order to get out of Barstow Yard and onto the main track, we're going to have to switch our way out, and they don't do that for you automatically on these manual housed yards. So what we have to do is we have to get here, and this is the nice thing about the 2013 version. It actually points out on this map where you need to go. So you get this map, and you can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. You use the right mouse button to hold down and pan and zoom and thing, and you can see all these tracks. And what you want to do is you want to center the player. So you center the player, and it's spelled like it's from Britain. Anyway, so the red one is you, and what you need to do is this blue line. When you see the yellow, it means you're in a yard. But when you see this dark blue line, that's the direction that your train, that says that your train will go on that track correctly. But as you can see, like, it'll come to this point here, and then it'll be gray, which means that switch is set against you. You can see that by the light blue line. So light blue line has that switch going this way. So to do that, all you do is you highlight over the switch and you right mouse click, and or left mouse click, I'm sorry, regular mouse click, and now you'll see the blue line extends down to this switch. But the same thing happens here. You're going to have to switch that switch too. And this is like, calling on the phone and telling the lineman on the far end of the yard to go and switch these switches for you. That's not something that the train, person driving the train does. It's someone that a lineman on the yard, working the yard actually does. So now you can see this blue line extends past the objective, and we're good to go. So what we're going to do now is you can kind of just scroll down here to make sure that it looks like it'll only go so far. So that is just the extent of the blue line. So I'm going to go back into the cabin, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to go over keyboard controls, because a lot of people control this with the mouse by actually dragging the switches, and that's okay, but I really prefer the keyboard controls. So what you can do with that is you go to the keyboard layout and kind of look at some controls here. But the ones we're going to be most concerned about are well, they call it the regulator, but it's actually the throttle. So A is accelerate, D is decelerate, and then the reverser, W is forward, and S is backwards. So those are your standard WASD controls that you'll be doing most of train driving on. And then you got your brakes. So engine brake control, we don't worry about that. Train brake control is one of the most important. So release the brakes, we're going to be pressing the semicolon key, and to apply brakes, we're going to be pressing the apostrophe key, and then dynamic, that'll come into play later. So anyway, enough talking, let's actually play this game. So here's how that works. What you want to do is you first want to set your reverser to forward by holding W, and then you want to release your brakes by pressing the semicolon key until it says release above here, and as you see, the brake pressure is decreasing. Now at this point, you want to sound this horn short twice, 1, 2, and apply throttle, and that'll get us moving. And you only want to apply the throttle. The way the throttle works is it's set up in the 8 segments. So here's the throttle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it only detents to these locations. So you want to only apply a little bit of throttle on these heavy freight trains, because if you apply too much, your wheels will spin on the track and you'll hear this horrible chugga sound, and it means that you're grinding away steel on steel, and it's not good. So get moving up to, we'll just keep this one on this because it's a freight train, and freight trains are supposed to be deliberately slow. So we'll kind of just get up to speed here. Remember, this is our current speed, and the speed is 15. This particular motor is a very basic model, so you don't see all these call-outs, and I haven't figured out a way to get them on the screen. If you press up on the arrow key, you can kind of see that there is like a little speedometer in here. But these are all supposed to have indicators in them, and they do on some of the payware models that are really cool, but this one doesn't have that. So let's get moving here, and these are the switches from before, these track switches that we had previously gone into. Sorry about that. So we're coming up to speed here, and all the switches are good, and we're coming out of the yard. So everything's just sit back and watch the train accelerate. And there'll be a lot of points in these Let's Plays where it's just kind of just sit back and relax and watch what's going on. Nothing complicated. But every time I see something that kind of needs explanation, I'll mention it. So coming up here on the left-hand side is our first signal, and the one you want to worry about is the one at the top. The one at the bottom is just a placeholder, and the one at the top is green, which means go, you're good to go. So that's all that really means. A lot of people, originally I thought that the reason there's two signals, one on top of the other, is because there's two tracks, and that the bottom signal is telling you the condition of the other track. That's not true at all. That's normally that's not true at all, because you'll see two signals and you'll be on one track. Now it's kind of true in the fact that what that signal tells you is it's warning you of switching over to the other track, and you can look at it that way. But it doesn't tell you. The bottom signal is red not because of the other track being unusable. It's red because it's telling you that that signal is on, but you don't have to worry about it. You only have to worry about the top signal. So the green on top of the red is good. So what we're doing now is we are on this main track, but the back of the train, as you can see, is still in the back of this yard. It's still coming through onto this main track. So until it does that, we can't exceed 15. As you can see, we're doing just good. We're just cruising up here to 14, and so we'll kind of just let that settle there. We're on a slight uphill right now. That's what this percentage is in the lower left corner of the screen. That means that you're on an 0.9% grade. In the U.S. tracks, grade is always expressed in percent, and in other routes it's a ratio. So we just exited the yard. As you can see, our line speed jumped up to 30. The thing is, though, is that we didn't see a sign for that, so we really don't have any way of knowing that the line speed is 30, because in real life we wouldn't have seen a sign unless we had researched the route. So in reality, you would stay at 15 until you saw a sign that indicated something else. But we're going to say that we have enough intelligence that the information we see down here is our own personal knowledge of the route. So as you can see, the back of the train just passed this yellow 60 sign. And that yellow 60 sign means that the line speed of the track is now 60 miles an hour. So we can add a little bit of extra throttle here. Don't go power hungry quite yet. I mean, you can do it. I mean, we're going fast enough that the train's slow enough, but in real life you don't want to apply that much power, or else your wheels will still spin. Once you're up to like 20 miles an hour, though, you're pretty good to go. So give some power. And we are on our way. Sorry. So as you can see, there's a signal over here on the right too, but that signal only applies to this track, so we don't have to worry about interpreting that signal. We only worry about the signals that are on this side of the track because they apply to us. So we're good to go on that. As you can see on the scrolling map down here, these little indicators, this is the distance in miles you're from it, and that's a signal. So you can see there's the signal right there, and then this is a speed limit, or a track change speed limit. And you can see that there's these yellow signs along the track here, and that one went by pretty quickly, but those rectangular shaped ones on top of the other, those mean that that is the speed that applies right there. As soon as the front of your train passes that speed applies. So now we're speed limit's 55 on the track, and that's a track speed limit. You saw there were two signs. The top sign said P79 and the bottom side said F55. That's again the difference between freight and passengers. Different types of trains. So here comes another freight train. 90% of the trains on this area of the track are going to be freight trains. So we are at speed. See, 54. These double stacked trains, they actually are pretty famous or pretty popular, around this area. You see them a lot. They're common. So you see, we're not applying any power to the train, but we're keeping our speed, and we're slowly decelerating. But this train's just coasting along here because we're on this flat 2% push through the high desert here. Now, here's another thing. Coming up on the horizon here, you can see that there's a grade crossing, and the standard procedure for anything going across this track is to do a long, long, short, long horn. So we'll do that. So I'm not going to do that every time. I just wanted to demonstrate it there. It's kind of just a pain to remember it. Sometimes you'll have a little sign on the side of the track that says W, and W means blow your horn or blow your whistle to alert, or it is a horn. Blow your horn to alert, that you're coming up to a grade crossing or some other reason. So whenever you hear a train whistle and it's annoying at night or whatever, it's because they're required by law to do that, by the rule books, in order to do that during the day. So when you're going up to a train crossing. So that's why they do it, and if you listen to it, you'll hear that long, long, short, long rhythm, which indicates that they're going to cross. You'll notice in the background there's this radio noise. That's like they use radio to communicate, kind of like air traffic control. But this one's just on a loop. It's just a bunch of filler. And they keep talking about this foreman Dan Hernandez. Kind of gets annoying after a while. There's a way to go in and turn that off, but I never really cared to do it. Those little gray signs we keep passing on the left, those are mile markers. I don't think they serve any other purpose. Yeah, this one's pretty boring, but they won't all be like this. I might, once we've done a few scenarios and nothing's really happening, I'll probably cut a lot of this material out. But for this one, I wanted to put the whole thing in there. It's long, but it's not that bad. Well, the other ones might be longer, and I'll probably cut out some material out of those.
Might be interesting to note the clouds in the desert. Funny enough, it really actually looks like this outside right now in the Victor Valley. It's been raining for the past several weeks. Not constantly, but it's strange. It's been raining a little bit every day across the area, which is like, well, it's a desert, so it shouldn't rain, but it does. We're kind of a wannabe desert. We don't really try hard enough. But it's good to see rain every once in a while.
And we're back. Oh, I'm back. We just entered part of the desert known as Oro Grande, or Oro Grande, and it's an early Spanish settlement that they found had an abundance of gold underground, and there isn't much left. There's still some stuff left up there, and call it Oro Grande, which translates into big gold. But that's about that. The other thing worth noting is that our next destination is our arrival point, as you can see indicated by the hand here, which means stop at East Victorville Siding 5 in 5 miles. One thing we can do while we're kind of waiting is take a look at planning here. We got the train coming in on the left-hand track. We're rolling in, and we're going to be on this rail all the way down here. Let's see, we're going to still be on that rail. Sorry, this is longer than I thought it was. And siding 5 is this fourth one down from here. So what we're going to have to do is we'll have to set the siding to that one. Make sure I'm not, yeah, I'm good, okay. So this is Oro Grande, just to kind of take a look at it as we pass through here. One of the biggest industries in the high desert is cement. So this is a cement processing facility that we're passing here on the left. Pretty cool. Nothing too exciting. Signals are all still good. Let's go back to that map again and take a look here. So we're coming in on siding 5, which is the fourth one down. So we have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and be sure that this switch is put onto this fourth rail. So everything else, I have to set that one too. That should be what we need. Because this one's set, so that should be what we need to do. Setting the switches is kind of annoying, but it's part of this particular version, or this particular track setup. This particular scenario doesn't set it for you. So this is one of the things you got to remember to do when you're needing to stop in a certain siding, and it instructs you to do. Just go in and make sure that they're clicked right. And we have a 35 mile an hour speed limit coming up, but typically we wouldn't see this in real life. What we're going to end up seeing is a approach speed warning sign, and we passed a couple on the way. I didn't really indicate which one was which. And as well as that, we also have a new signal coming up. This new signal is called an approach caution signal. It means you need to be prepared to stop at the next signal. So what this really means is that we got to start slowing down now, and the standard speed for passing an approach caution signal is what they call in the industry medium speed, and medium speed for freights is 30 miles per hour. And the rule behind that is kind of, I don't really understand it completely, but the rule says you're supposed to slow down immediately, but other places have said, well, you don't really have to start slowing down immediately. You really only need to start slowing down if you can see a danger signal ahead, which means you'd have to stop. But in all honesty, you don't really know how far away that next signal is going to be. Here's that sign. So it's an approach sign because it has that chevron shape and it says 40-35. So at this point, you definitely do want to start applying brakes. Apply them up to the full service. That's acceptable. And we will actually continue to decrease our speed all the way down to medium, just to be on the safe side, as we are on approach to our destination. Again, the reason for track speed limits, like you see here, the 35 and all the signs you see, the track speed limits are due to conditions of the track, or the fact that you're going to be going around a steep corner or something like that. And the reasons for signal regulated speeds, like the decrease to medium, is because of something on the track, like another train, for instance, or also the need to switch tracks to enter a switching junction, which would require a decrease in speed in order to safely pass through that junction without falling off the track. So we'll go through here at 30 until we get to the next signal, see what that signal's aspect is. Aspect means, what is the signal telling you to do, based on the colors of that signal or whatever that signal is showing. So we are actually passing into an area of town that I'm pretty familiar with. This is the Victorville approach, and there is a road here on the right that would be Highway 18, Happy Trails Highway. National Trails Highway, excuse me. It's not Happy Trails until you're in Apple Valley, but a National Trails Highway on the right-hand side. Here, if you go to helicopter view, you can see it. Yeah, see it right there. There's National Trails. And we have a interesting signal coming up here. This signal is called a slow approach signal. And that means that we need to slow down to, actually never mind, that's restricted approach signal. We need to slow down to restricted speed prior to entering the condition that is requiring it. But I'll slow down now because we're getting there. And that flashing, basically a lot of people will see that and it's like, does that mean to stop? They're not sure. But because they're not both red, because one is red and the other one's flashing, because you have that other indication, it means that it's telling you, okay, well, yeah, this means you need to make an action, and that action is to slow down to restricted speed. If they were one red signal or there were two red signals and both were solid, that would be an absolute stop. You cannot proceed past that signal. So we don't have that this time. We just have the 15-mile-an-hour requirement. And I am being a little bit proactive and slowing down sooner than probably need to, but it's good to do that. Especially when you're a freight train, time doesn't really matter that much. But what's going to happen here is I should probably verify that we're on the right path here, and it looks like we are good. We're going to be good. That's going there, that's going there, that's going there to siding 5, which is 4th one down, so we're good to go. Slowing down a little too much here. So this track here, we're actually going to enter this track, as you can see. We're cutting over here, and if anyone watching this happens to be someone that drives along National Trails Highway on a regular basis, you'll recognize this structure over here. It's a little bit outdated because in real life there's these two large wind turbines that are mounted here, but they aren't here. This factory is pretty much modeled exactly as it is in real life. It's really strange. And that building over there is Emma Jean's Hollenberger, which has been on a couple episodes of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and Man vs. Food, or whatever. It's a pretty good place. It's also where a scene from Kill Bill Volume 2 was filmed. Yeah, it's interesting being able to see where you live represented in 3D graphics in a video game. So all the switches are set, so we're actually transferring right over to where we need to go, which is this 4th track down, this one right here. And you can kind of confirm that with if you see the phrase down here, siding 5, that means that is where your train's going to go. If the switches weren't set up here, it would actually tell you where you're going to go. So you'd kind of see that as like a last resort to correct any error that you made. But set it up ahead of time, you kind of get everything set in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to come all the way to the end of this yellow segment here, which signifies which is the siding. And you can just kind of judge that based on right here too. And we'll bring as much of the consist train onto that yellow part as possible. And when we stop, we should get an indication that we have correctly executed the command. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring our reverser to 0 because we are going to be stopping. So we don't need to waste fuel. When you're at reverser 0, you aren't using any fuel, and then we're just going to apply a nice, easy, smooth 50% brakes, bring the train down to a stop. And now you get this little red indication here, which basically means that the simulation recognizes that you've completed a goal, and it's basically just dead time as the game processes as to what the next command is going to be, just to kind of verify that you've stopped correctly. And then that's the end of that scenario. So thank you everyone for watching. I promise the next few won't be as long out and boring. I'll try to focus on the complicated parts. But our next scenario will have us going down the Cajon Pass and demonstrating the use of the dynamic brakes in a little bit more exciting, complicated curving track situation. All right, and I hope you guys join me next time. Thank you for watching.